Want the security of a disease-free garden but feel guilty about harming bees and other pollinators? Well, look no further because today I'm showing you how to make your very own fungicide, germicide, wombo combo spray that will not only save your plants from disease, it is also completely environmentally friendly and will run you only a few bucks each year. If you want to learn how to make it yourself, stay tuned because I'm going to be showing you the very precise recipe for making it and what happens when you don't follow the recipe quite so precisely. Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Taylor, and for the past 5 years, Cassidy and I have been on our mission to grow more of our own food and flowers using more natural, sustainable, and even regenerative approaches. And JADAM organic farming has been crucial in that journey. We have learned some incredible gardening techniques from 2 of Young-Sung Cho's books, to which we'll link in the description if you want to get these yourself. But we've also created several resources in printable form that contain easy to read recipes, dilution rates, and all of that. So that will also be in the description below. Feel free to check those out along with our other videos on some of these techniques. Now I want to start by explaining a little bit of the science behind this spray. And if you don't care about that and you just want to learn how to make the sulfur, no problem. We've got everything time-stamped. Feel free to jump to that part of the video. So what is liquid sulfur and how exactly does it work? Well, in his book, JADAM Organic Pest and Disease Control, Young-Sung Cho describes his suite of pest and disease management. There's the microbial solution that brings healthy microbes to the plant, the herbal solution that deters various kinds of pests, the JADAM Sulfur, which fends off plant disease, and the JADAM Wetting Agent, which binds the other ingredients together and helps them stick to and spread out on the plant leaves and stems when applied foliarly. From what I can tell, the name JADAM Sulfur refers mostly to the method of creating the liquid sulfur. Instead of heating up the sulfur through mechanical processes to dissolve it in water, JADAM Sulfur uses chemical processes, specifically combining sodium hydroxide with water to generate the heat necessary for dissolving solid sulfur. Once the chemical process has been completed, you're left with a water-soluble sulfur spray that can be combined with the other inputs previously mentioned and then sprayed on plants. But how does sulfur prevent disease and even kill it once it's appeared? Well, sulfur has long been recognized as an all-purpose fungicide and germicide. The sulfur itself makes conditions that are not suitable specifically for pathogenic microbes. Now here we're going to get a little bit nerdy. What is so cool about sulfur as an antifungal compound is that it primarily targets fungal pathogens through specific metabolic disruptions, such as enzyme inhibition and oxidative stress, which have been shown to be more pronounced in harmful organisms. The reason that sulfur doesn't harm beneficial fungi and bacteria is because beneficial microbes often possess either adaptive mechanisms, such as enzyme systems that neutralize sulfur's toxic effects, or they're able to metabolize it in other ways into non-toxic form. A lot of beneficial microbes actually thrive in sulfur-rich environments. Bacterial species such as Thiobacillus and Pseudomonas convert sulfur into sulfate, which is a plant-available nutrient. Now, as with just about anything, overuse of JADAM sulfur can lead to conditions that are actually harmful for plant and microbial fertility. So it's important to be restrained in your application, and we'll dive into dilution and application rates later on. But it's always advised that you start by doing a few tests on a few plants to make sure that you're not applying it too strong. So those are a few of the reasons why sulfur is so potentially helpful in fighting against plant disease. Young-Sung Cho and others have reported eradicating nearly every common plant disease. Things like powdery mildew, rust, black spots, blight, all eradicated by applying JADAM sulfur. Of course, many will hear this and think, well, if I just grow healthy plants, I shouldn't face problems with disease in the first place. And that's true. In theory, healthy ecosystems and microbial-rich soil prevent disease from spreading to your plants. But in practice, sometimes it's just not the case. And it is nice to have something on hand to be able to respond quickly to a dying plant, especially if you're expecting to get food from that plant or if you're growing it for market. Now, because of how effective sulfur is in dealing with these fungicides, you'd think that someone would have started making this, bottling it up, and selling it to struggling gardeners. And you'd be right. In fact, sulfur is the primary ingredient in most store-bought fungicides and germicides that you're likely to find. So why not just go and buy one of those products? Why bother making it yourself? Well, you totally can do that. And especially if you find a reputable company selling a sulfur spray, feel free to do that. But with the laws and regulations surrounding what exactly companies are required to disclose regarding the ingredients of gardening amendments, I am skeptical, to say the least, about what all is going into a spray that you might find at the store. Most big companies do not care about the environment. They don't care about creating wildlife-safe products. They mostly care about getting you the best visible, immediate results possible so that you'll buy more of their stuff. That being the case, you run the risk of other stuff being added to the sulfur spray that you might buy from the store. Sure, it might be slightly more effective in eradicating disease or fending off pest pressure, but the risk that you're taking spraying unknown compounds into your garden is not one that I'm comfortable with personally. In addition to questionable added ingredients, you're definitely going to save a good amount of money in the long run. This cost me $100 to make a little over 2.5 gallons of JADAM Sulfur. So if I was to use on the high end a quart of this stuff on our large home garden each season, it's going to last me a decade. $10 a year ain't a bad investment. Whereas if you buy sulfur spray from the store, you're looking at probably twice the price for the cheapest option. So if you want to do a science experiment and save some money, DIY is the way to go, in my opinion. That being said, this is the last of the JADAM amendments that I have come to learn because of its higher barrier to entry. I'll say this a number of times in the video, but while the finished product is fully biodegradable and eco-friendly, the process of making the liquid sulfur is one that you want to be very careful with. With all of that out of the way, let's get into making it. To make the JADAM Sulfur, there are really only 3 ingredients that you need: sulfur powder, sodium hydroxide, and soft water. We'll drop the links to the specific brands we used, but most importantly, you want to be using the highest quality ingredients here. And by highest quality, I mean the most pure. The sulfur powder needs to be 99% or higher purity. The sodium hydroxide should be 100% pure. The water that you use needs to be soft water. You can use distilled water bought from the store. We're using our reverse osmosis water filter to get out all the hard minerals. Whatever you do, the water has to be soft. Now, these 3 ingredients are going to be combined, and the ensuing chemical reaction is going to liquefy the sulfur powder, making it water soluble and sprayable as a foliar application on your plants. And we'll get into exact amounts in a sec. In addition to these 3 ingredients, it's recommended, not required, that you add another couple ingredients: red clay powder and azomite or rock dust. Red clay is going to help the solution adhere a little bit better to your plants when you apply it foliarly. This is already meant to be paired with a JADAM wetting agent, which helps it stick to the plant, but red clay will aid in the process as well. Azomite is going to add some extra beneficial trace minerals that are all around good for your plants. And that being said, neither of those ingredients are required. I am using them because I have them and I'm trying to get the most out of this spray as possible, but don't feel like you need to go beyond the main 3 ingredients. I will also recommend that you follow my lead and take extra precautions to protect your body by investing in some goggles and basic face masks. You want to wear clothing that protects your skin when you make the sulfur because it's going to rise extremely high in temperature very quickly, and if you accidentally splash some on you, it will severely burn and cause a lot of harm. Please be careful when you make this. Now, I'll be honest, when I first tried making this stuff, I made a brutal mistake and that cost us the whole batch. And this mistake could have easily been avoided had I just read the instructions a little bit more carefully my first time. But the instructions are translated from Korean and the English can be confusing at times, so I wasn't exactly clear on why this step mattered. Anyway, the mistake I made was in how much water I added at each stage of the chemical reaction process. You see, the water needs to be added in 2 parts. One so that the chemical reaction can occur, and one later to help the solution cool down more quickly and dilute the intensity. My mistake was adding all the water in at once, which resulted in the solution not reaching high enough temperatures to effectively melt the sulfur. Sulfur melts at very high temperatures, so too much water added all at once will not let the temperature rise enough. This is what the undissolved sulfur liquid looked like. Practically nothing melted, and we had to dispose of it. And in case this happens to you, please be responsible and dispose of it properly. I waited until the sulfur had fully settled at the bottom of the pot, and then I poured off the water from the top, and I reserved the sulfur powder to be disposed at a local waste site in my town. Bummer. You can shame me in the comments section. My second attempt was successful, however, and that's the one that we'll show you. So for making a 10-liter batch of JADAM Sulfur, you will need to carefully measure out 2,500 grams of sulfur powder, 2,000 grams of sodium hydroxide, and 5,000 grams or 5 liters of water in either a heat-proof bucket or a stainless steel pot. You will also need an additional 3,200 grams or 3.2 liters of water reserved for later in the chemical process. Additionally and optionally, you can measure out 100 grams of red clay powder and 100 grams of azomite. Once you've measured these precisely in a very well ventilated area, preferably outside, combine the solid ingredients, the sulfur powder, sodium hydroxide, clay powder, and azomite, and pour them carefully into the soft water all at once. Immediately, the chemical reaction between the water and the sodium hydroxide will begin, and the temperature of the liquid will rise rapidly. You need to start stirring the mixture right away, slowly but thoroughly, with a clean wooden stick or pole to make sure that everything is mixing together fully and there are no clumps or pockets of dry powder. Don't stop stirring for more than a few minutes during this entire process. You also do not want to be standing with your head directly above this. The fumes are not ideal to breathe in. In fact, for people with respiratory issues, you may even want to get someone else to stir it for you. Don't mess around with this. We got poisonous fumes coming off the mixture for a little bit here. After only a few minutes, the solution will have raised to 175 degrees Fahrenheit or 80 degrees Celsius, and this is where the sulfur will start to melt. You'll see the mixture turn yellow and then quickly into a deeper amber color. Keep stirring carefully so that you don't splash and drag the stirring stick along the bottom of the bucket or the pot to break up any clumps of sulfur or red clay powder or acetylite. And now at this point, as the temperature continues to rise, make sure that it doesn't boil up and over the edge of the pot. If it starts to bubble excessively, you can add in some of your reserve water to cool it down for a bit. Just don't do this too soon because you want the sulfur to actually melt all the way or as much as possible. We made this in the middle of winter, so it didn't get close to boiling over, but that is something to be aware of. After you've stirred for around 15 minutes, the mixture should have peaked in temperature and started to come down. Now you can add the rest of the water to help it cool down more quickly. Keep stirring to make sure that as much as possible is dissolving. After another 15 minutes, you're going to be good to cover the container with a lid and then let it sit for 24 hours or so until it completely cools. Once it has fully cooled down, you're ready to strain and bottle it up. To do this, you'll want to agitate the pot as little as possible. There will be inevitably some sediment at the bottom. This is somewhat unavoidable. If possible, you want to skim off the liquid sulfur from the top to get the clearest stuff possible. Otherwise, it can clog up your sprayers, which is a pain. Be really careful going through this process. The solution is not going to be horribly toxic at this stage, but that being said, we started bottling in our kitchen and quickly stopped and relocated because the smell was pretty strong. And a strong sulfur scent is not something that you want in your home. This is probably best done outdoors or in a very well-ventilated area so that you don't stink up the place. Again, that being said, the solution at this stage is relatively harmless. You don't want to drink it, but if you get it on your skin, it'll be fine. The finished product, bottled up, looks like a really cool red color, very distinct amongst the other amendments. To use the JADAM Sulfur, there is sort of a sliding scale of dilution that correlates to how badly diseased your plant is. For an emergency level rescue mission, 1 part sulfur, 250 parts water will get you there, which for reference is about a tablespoon per gallon of water. You'll want to apply it every 4 to 5 days or once a week and make sure to reapply it if the rain washes it off. I mentioned before that the JADAM Sulfur pairs with the JADAM wetting agent, which is the surfactant that binds the liquid to the plant stems and leaves. So make sure to combine it with that if the disease is especially bad. For a breakout or just a moderately bad disease, like if it's starting to show up, you can scale back the dilution rate to 1 to 500 in soft water. That would be like a teaspoon in a gallon of water, and apply it once a week. For general maintenance purposes, you really don't need to apply it, but if you want to include it as a preventative measure, you could dilute it 1 to 1,000 or more. For storage purposes, you just need to keep the sulfur in an environment above freezing and it will last indefinitely. I recommend storing it in glass vessels if possible, but you can use a heavy-duty plastic that doesn't degrade quickly and keep it out of direct sunlight. And that's how to make JADAM Sulfur, everyone. Thanks for watching all the way through. And if you found that helpful, you really will want to check out some of our other videos on the JADAM wetting agent that combines with the sulfur spray. This is going to make the JADAM Sulfur all the more potent and effective. So check that out and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.